I'm the Senior Director of Programming in Front of House here at the Music Hall. Hey, give it up one more time for Dreadnought, our house band. So we have a really special evening tonight here featuring the Governor of California, Gavin Newsom, and his incredible new memoir, Young Man in a Hurry. We here at the Music Hall are honored to have the governor here as part of his book tour here in New Hampshire tonight. Before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. Please take a moment to locate your nearest exit up in the balcony over to your left, the doors and stairs that you came in. We remind you there is no flash photography or video taking tonight. Please be considerate of your neighbors behind and around you. You haven't had your books yet. You're going to get those on the way out. All right, they'll be downstairs in the lower lobby on your way out. I have some thank yous. First, one more big thank you to the band behind me, Dreadnought. They curate and arrange that music specifically for our literary series, and we are so thankful to them. We're also thankful and grateful to our members and to all of you for joining us tonight and for supporting our literary series here at the Music Hall. We'd like to thank our generous sponsors, including our lead sponsor, McKeon Charitable Giving, our season sponsors, Carey and Giampa Realtors, J Group Hospitality, and Port Walk Place, our contributing partner and literary presenting sponsor, the University of New Hampshire. Give it up, go Wildcats. And finally, our Talks presenting sponsor and partner on all things literary, New Hampshire Public Radio. Please give them all a big round of applause. All right, you certainly did not come to see me. We are excited to have Jack Cocciarella, progressive Gen Z political commentator, as tonight's moderator. Please join me in giving him a big welcome.
Thank you all so much. How are we doing tonight, Portsmouth? But how are we doing tonight knowing that Kristi Noem was fired just to come out? Keep your pets safe tonight, okay? It's gonna be a mess. But it is not just that sad state of affairs at DHS that I think is important to talk about tonight. Before we bring out a man who has fought maybe like no other in this country, I want to talk about the fight that's been happening here. Because recently, we saw Donald Trump attempting to set up another one of his many disgusting, depraved, immoral concentration camps here, and y'all booted the fuck out of the state. So I just want to give yourselves a round of applause. There is so much people power right now, having so much success across the country. It is the reason why I'm able to be here tonight. I don't know if some of y'all watch the show and tune in. If you do, I love you and you're amazing. But there is no person who has taken on that mantle and shown what it means to fight. He talked about it in his book that I'm very excited for y'all to read, and we're going to talk about it a lot tonight. But he has shown it in every aspect of a very multifaceted career. Held a lot of titles, this guy that I'm about to bring out on stage. Lieutenant Governor, Mayor of San Francisco, Governor. He's about to be unemployed. And then I think y'all might have a hand in figuring out what he does next, but I will save that for later in our conversation. Let's bring out the man, Governor Gavin Newsom.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Unemployed, huh? Damn. Good to see her. This is nice. This place is nice.
It's a good setup. I think we're gonna have a little bit of fun tonight.
Well, you mean you already began? I do have a sell-by date. I will acknowledge I'm a carton of milk.
Not done yet. We got a little time.
10 months.
We'll have a lot to talk about on that. But before we get into the Noem news and have a little fun, this thing's a bestseller. 100,000 copies, almost seems
Thank
it's
you.
moved.
Knock on wood. Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you all very much. You do something like this. By the way, this was I'm embarrassed to say this, took me about 5 years to write this book. And you put all your heart and soul in it. You really try to stress test it. You try to be as honest and forthcoming as you possibly can. You have a few selected people read it. They say nice things. You say, read it again. Are you sure? And then you put it out, and you just can't control the third thing, which is how everybody reacts, whether they buy it or not. And so I've never experienced anything like this, and it's been an extraordinarily humbling week in terms of those sales and in terms of some reaction that we've gotten from the book, which I appreciate.
And I've got a lot of reactions. We're going to be getting into those tonight. We have a lot to talk about throughout your life. But of course, there is always breaking news. Usually it is bad. Tonight, today, it is fantastic. I'm sorry, it just made me so happy. Can we just applaud the fact that Kristi Noem is out of a job one more time?
But let's be honest here. The dark heart of this administration is not Noem, it's Stephen Miller, and he needs to be next. And it's really true. In so many ways, she's just a scapegoat in all this. Yeah. Everything she was doing was designed by Miller. And I don't think it, I know it. Remember where I come from, California. Future, in this respect, happened in California first. We got a guy named Bovino, Greg Bovino, the guy dresses up in, the 1930s garb. And we got to know him during the transition with Trump, where he went into the Central Valley and he specifically targeted Home Depots. And there were some aggressive operations. He was auditioning for Stephen Miller. Within a few months of the new administration coming in, you may recall that I got a call from Donald Trump, 17-minute phone call, where he alleged he read me the Riot Act, where he was actually wanting to discuss how many mega hats he sold and trying to convince me he actually won the debate against Kamala Harris. And the next morning I wake up and he's federalized 4,000 National Guard. A few days later, he sends 700 active duty Marines, not overseas, but the second largest city in the United States. We said it at the time, this is a preview of things to come. A few weeks later, we started to see more of Greg Bovino. We started to see these folks dressed up, in masks with no identification. We started seeing people quite literally disappearing from the streets of Los Angeles. We saw what happened in the shadow docket with the Supreme Court, where they basically gave permission, license to racially profile, not just on the basis of your skin color, not just on the basis of the language you speak, but where you congregate. We said that was a preview of things to come. Kristi Noem's fingerprints on all of that, but notably Stephen Miller's playbook. And we have got to call that out, and he needs to be next.
And it's something that it's a refrain you've returned to, is the weakness masquerading as strength of this administration that plays out in so many different ways. And we certainly see it from those right now beating the war drum in this administration with no regard for the Americans who have lost their lives, who will lose their lives, the billions of dollars we're going to spend every day, because Donald Trump and Republicans, and I want to say, considering we did just have a vote in the House today on the War Powers Act, some Democrats who feel comfortable enough to talk tough and act tough and not want to back it up themselves. I found, and maybe it's because I'm a younger guy, a lot of the connection of what you talked about with your kids and your family and the kind of future-looking view throughout this book. This is an administration that doesn't care about my generation, and they've stripped away so many of the promises of what America should be. You talk a lot in the book about your kids. How do you think, there's so much to talk about when it comes to Donald Trump's illegal and unjustifiable war, but when you think just about your kids specifically and this cycle that we continue to see under Republican presidents, where does it take you?
My 10-year-old had his birthday last week, Dutch. My youngest, I have a 10, 12, 14, 16-year-old, 2 boys and 2 girls. And, Dutch has never seen, he doesn't know a world without Trump in it, even during those Biden years. The escalator sort of marking his first moments, and as they are captured today. And just think about that, the behavior he's modeling, he's seen on TV, what he believes it is to be president of the United States. There's a whole generation of young people that have been shape-shifted by this, and I'll say it, respectfully, this invasive species, Donald Trump, because he is. I mean, he's taken over the Republican Party. They're completely supine. He's taken over Congress. I mean, Speaker Johnson, there's no co-equal branch of government. There was a heartbeat, let's not overstate it, out of the Supreme Court with one or two decisions, and it actually, Trump was confronted for the first time with the Constitution.
And we're getting that check soon from you, right?
And we're going to get that reimbursement check of $1,701, which you all are owed as it relates to the illegal tariffs. But look, the one thing all this has in common, I think the whole Trump story is really a corruption story at the core. I mean, even on the tariffs, I mean, let's not forget what the tariffs are about. One of the things that was so self-evident when he was in there on that Friday press conference, and even by Trump standards, it was a low moment as he was condemning and attacking personally the Supreme Court justices in that decision. It's his personal portfolio. I mean, he reduced by 26% the tariffs in Vietnam after he got the golf course deal. $1.5 billion deal, fast-tracked and approved. You saw the $2 billion, the Witkoff family, the Trump family, World Liberty Financial. And in return, the UAE got from you, without any consideration of national security, the American people, they got high-valued computer chips. It's a corruption story, the most corrupt administration in modern American history, perhaps in the history of this country. And it's not just the $400 million planes. It's across the spectrum, jaw-dropping. And I guess that's the great challenge we all have, because it relates to your question, sort of the meta, is, this guy, it's flood the zone, just dominating the narrative. He's got a propaganda network 24/7, working full-time for him. And if you think I'm overstating it, just consider Laura Ingraham herself is a business partner with Donald Trump Jr. They started a SPAC together with, interesting, this guy Chamath, whose partner is the head of, runs the AI and crypto policy for the Trump administration. It's a corruption story aided and abetted by the propaganda network at Fox and Sinclair and One American News and Newsmax. So we are up against something profound, consequential. And I think for us, particularly on behalf of our kids and grandkids, in the spirit of your question in this book, it's why I'm here in many respects, that we cannot lose our focus. We cannot lose our momentum. Donald Trump is in retreat. Today is a perfect example of that, with first firing of a high-profile cabinet member. He's in retreat places like Minnesota, because the steel spine of citizens that stood up, real patriots in this country, pushed back against all that. And you're seeing it globally, and it's, again, you're exactly right. That's why Trump is acting out as he always does. Weakness masquerading as strength. That's Donald Trump.
Well, and you talk about the weakness also of those around, like Mike Johnson, John Thune. These are spineless guys who have ceded everything. They don't care about the Congress. You also talk about, kind of at the end of the book, teeing this up, make sure you read all of it. It was fantastic. Some weakness of someone who has profited massively. I always think it's kind of funny that, do you notice how the media always refers to Don Jr. and Eric and Kushner too as the Trump kids? These aren't fully grown adults who should be prosecuted for their financial crimes. But did you see the interview? It was on CNBC with Don Jr. And Eric, and they were kind of talking about well, it's our right to profit massively off the presidency because you kicked us off of Twitter after we did an insurrection. I'm I don't really think that these things are balanced. But Jared Kushner is like this as well. And he's done it a little quietly, but at the end of the book, you talk about Kushner kind of getting made fun of a little bit. Jared is having some fun poked at him at the expense of Trump. Do you think there is a certain individual, because you talked about this, kind of the subtle flattery, but the put-downs of Trump. It's all a big show when you see him in person. You talk about him as a very different guy. Do you think that's contributed to some of what we see from a Mike Johnson, from a John Thune, from any of these Republicans in Congress who should just say, there is a madman in the White House sending us to war, killing Americans in the streets, spending trillions of dollars, 25th Amendment time, but they just don't do it? Do you think that there's something about those people or something about Trump that leads them to this place where they have given it all up for him?
Well, I love that question, and I try to answer it by creating my own Patriot site. I have a website. You can go on there. And it's a Patriot site where I sell knee pads.
Sold out, correct?
Yeah, well, well, we have new Trump signature series knee pads that just came in. Because the first knee pads all did sell out, just like our law firms sold out, just like our universities were selling out, just like CEOs were selling out, members of the media were selling out, not just those elected officials that you're referencing. And they have to be called out, all of them. I even had to go, last minute I was invited because they didn't want Trump to dominate and flood the zone over there in Zurich, in Davos. I brought the knee pads with me. I'm not gonna get invited back. I started handing it out to folks out there. I mean, they're all complicit at this moment. Society becomes how we behave. We are our behaviors. This is happening on our watch. For things to change, we need to change. And that was my mindset after last June when we saw the federalization of the National Guard. I said, I got to step things up. I'm not a bystander. I have agency. We all have agency. I've got to do more. I've got to do better. And we've got to punch back. And so it's right to call all these guys out. We have to call them all out. We have to. We'll lose this country. It's the 200. It doesn't feel like the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. You know, and we should be celebrating the best of the Roman Republic and best of Greek democracy, co-equal branches of government, popular sovereignty, the rule of law, not the rule of dawn. And I think it's dawning on all of us. We're starting to wake up now. Our immune system has been woken up. You're waking up, not just here in New Hampshire. We're seeing it all across the country. We're seeing it at the No Kings rallies. We're seeing people finally stand up again because people are expressing a deeper understanding of what's at stake. And so, from my perspective, this notion of weakness has marked a lot of my frustration. And I'm not here to, and this is not, I'm not trying to bash my party. But this time...
Sometimes it's necessary.
But this time last year, I was worried. You may have felt differently. You may have said, we got this. But I didn't feel that this time last year. I did, you know, Jack, right after Trump was elected, I got a lot of criticism from members of my own party because I did a special session of the legislature to prepare. They referred to in the press as Trump-proofing California. And that wasn't the frame I used, but I understood that frame in the context of having understood Trump and Trumpism 1.0. I was there, and we write about it in the epilogue briefly. This is not a book about my governorship, but in the epilogue, I write about a story that Jack was referring to and a little bit about Trump and how I met him during my transition. For the first time, I was on Marine One, Air Force One. By the way, there's some good stories here. As he's taking me on the royal tour of the plane into his bedroom. And a lot, I'm just saying,
He's got a crush.
There's some interesting stuff here.
You and Zoran, you could really get him.
No, I've got to talk to Zoran. I know how this love story ends, Zoran, but we did that, and people said, well, you just, you know, that's a closed fist, not an open hand. I said, well, it's not about that. I hope we don't have to use any of the money we were doing. We did a supplemental appropriation for litigation. We just announced I think it's our 60th lawsuit against Trump. I don't even think there's been, 60 weeks since he's been elected. It's code red. It's not blinking yellow. It's code red. You've seen it. Sky, I was down on this book tour. We kicked it off down there in Atlanta, and it was, met with the commissioners down there in Fulton County. Yeah. I mean, he's going to take over that commission so he can manipulate and manage the outcome, one of the most critical swing districts in the United States, for the election this November. We saw what happened on Election Day in California last November when we had an initiative on the ballot. Prop 50 sent out BORTAC teams. These are the Border Patrol tactical units. The guys dressed up, right out of, this is the Apache helicopter guys. And they were all sent out to Dodger Stadium the morning of the election to send a message to our diverse communities. You may not want to show up to vote. Trump sent out on Truth Social that morning, the election was rigged, sent out election monitors from the DOJ, Pam Bondi, who the next day announced the election was rigged, and they observed it, went to the Supreme Court. They are not screwing around. He wants to federalize the election. He says he wants to nationalize it one day, just 15 states elections because of the corruption. What's the SAVE Act? That's not about ID. It's about registration. It's about who gets to vote, who doesn't get to vote. They are not screwing around. We will lose this country. But first, we cannot lose our minds over this shock and awe. And so I just want to long-windedly, sort of back to the introduction here, just thank you all for being here as the antidote to all of that, because you wouldn't be showing up if you'd given up. You wouldn't be here for yourselves and for each other and for this conversation if you had given into the cynicism, fear, and anxiety. So thank you.
Well, and that's exactly why when I saw, I think it was 2-3 weeks ago, Senator Alyssa Slotkin asked, is ICE going to be showing up at polling locations? And the answer was, I'm not going to answer that question. And they have consistently not answered that question. So you talk about the rot at the heart of DHS, Stephen Miller, but also we're going to have now Markwayne Mullin. I would say I'm not a particular fan of. I don't know what his history with dogs is, but we now have Chuck Schumer saying, in terms of a confirmation vote, I don't know what the opposition is going to be. John Fetterman already came out and said, right away, on top of it, John, he's going to be voting to confirm Markwayne Mullin, but this is a guy who's going to do the same exact thing. Like, it's great that we got Kristi Noem out. He's going to do the same exact thing. What do you say? Like, what do you say to those Democrats?
Aren't we in a partial government shutdown? Over funding and reforms at DHS? I mean, I'm old enough to remember that a few weeks ago. Back to the shock and awe, right? Staying focused on what matters. It's not what happens to us, it's how we respond to what happens to us. And so we have responded, all of us, goes to your point and question. Over the course of last year, we're all iterating, and we're all waking up. And we're starting to assert ourselves more. I mean, look, we try to do that, and some of you may have seen it. I have a little tonal shift on my social media. If any of you have gone to Instagram, forgive me. If my mom were alive, she likely would get that bar of soap and wash my mouth out, but as the good folks at Fox suggested she do. But we also are trying to do it substantively. And back to my litany, and by the way, that litany, I was barely halfway through the receipts on how Trump is going to try to vandalize and rig the 2026 election. We haven't gotten to what happens after that. But you saw what he did just a few months ago. Texas in the headlines today, and what a turnout, huh? Democrats turning out in larger numbers than Republicans. Thank you, Donald Trump. He is our big, you want get out the vote. Donald Trump is the leader of the get out the vote for Democratic Party. But you may recall, he tried to rig the elections in plain sight. It wasn't that many months ago. Knowing he's going to get shellacked, he's going to get crushed in the midterm elections. It's the one thing we all know and he agrees with, unless he could figure out a way to rig it. And that's why he called Greg Abbott and he said, I'm quote unquote entitled to 5 seats. Entitled to 5 seats.
Didn't work out well.
And it passed was prologue in some respects. And again, this goes back to the point I was trying to make delicately about my party, our party. Our response may have been to try to win an argument and say, boy, that's just not fair, that's not right. Mid-decade redistricting is just wrong. Meanwhile, these guys, the ruthlessness on the other side, we're trying to win a debate and they're consolidating power. And it was a debate I had even internally as governor, because I put out a tweet saying we're watching. People say, oh, thank you, it was a beautiful tweet. I said, you're welcome. And then I thought, I'm really contributing to, the reason our founding fathers lived and died. And then someone said, well, maybe you can do something else. I said, oh, no, I'm working on an op-ed. We'll see if New York Times hasn't taken many of my op-eds. Maybe they'll take this one. And I realized that's not going to work anymore. The ruthlessness is real, and it became vivid at that moment. And instead, we decided, obviously, to hold the line, draw the lines, redraw them, and then go back to the ballot in another special election. And we were able to pass Proposition 50, and we were able, with your support, many of you, to redistrict in California. And for me, what was so amazing about that, and it goes to this notion, it was back to just, strength again. Yeah. Getting off our heels, not being shaped-shifted, starting to win. We're defining the terms now of engagement. 90-day sprint, raised $118 million. Yeah, and I know at first a lot of us, they go high, low, I get it. But we're going to lose our country. All of us cannot wait. We can't wait. And I bet 99% of you, if someone calls, says, what do you want from the party? Well, I really want to focus on what we're for, not just what we're against. I'm with you. I'm with the 99% of you. But right now, we have to be in this resistance mindset. We'll get to renewal. And that's the easy part in so many respects. The hard part is right in front of us every single day. And so that's why I believe we have to fight fire with fire. It's about being strong and right, not weak and wrong. And so that's the energy. And Jack, just bringing it back to the book, it's part of the journey that I've been on, the iterations of my life. And by the way, if you all came here hoping to have a book on the 10-point plan to restore America's future and how we all get out of the muck, you should leave now. That is not this book. If you came here to, learn about a politician's book, a sort of sanitized version, I worked so hard, I raised my son, all that. No, that's not this either. This is a book that I told you took 5 years because I was in the process of learning what I thought I knew about my life and my background, and I started learning about all these secrets, all these lies I was told as a kid. I was starting in that process. This memoir became a memoir, I say a subtitle, of discovery. And it became ultimately a love letter to my mom. 19, when she was pregnant, 2 kids at 22, 3 on her own. Came from no wealth, no background, no privilege. I never understood when my dad and mom got divorced. They never talked about it. My mom passed away 20 years ago. My dad survived. This is why the book basically ends. He survived to see his son get elected governor and passed away a few weeks later. He literally forced himself to be there for that moment. And I never understood the moments that marked their divorce until in the process of writing this, someone said, do you know that there was an oral history that your dad participated in at the Bancroft Library? You may want to, listen to it, and maybe you can get some nice old Irish stories to put in the book. Well, one of the first things he talks about is why he divorced my mom. And I remember calling my sister. I said, have you heard? She said, I never knew that. He ran for supervisor, county supervisor in San Francisco, lost, then turned around the next year, ran for state senate and lost, 1968. And in the oral history says he was broke financially and broken and had a breakdown and just had to get the hell out of there and took off, leaving my mom to raise 2 kids on her own. 2, 3, 4 jobs. I describe all her jobs, working hard work and grit. We raised, just single moms. To all the single moms out there, there are no more powerful and potent forces in life. And so the book's a love letter to mom, and to the fact that she, it's just taught me grit, perseverance, and it's a lot of storytelling, and it's also the story of how my father sort of came back into my life over the course of time. Sports played a big role in that, Jack.
And we're going to talk about
We were talking in the back a little bit about that, and all of a sudden he identified now with me a little bit differently, and then of course my passion and my mission for public service.
Would y'all believe me if I told you, and you'll learn in the book, that this is maybe a little, weren't always the kind of broad, tall, self-assured, kind of got it. There was some, can you tell me about the suits to school? This was a thing that you'll learn in the book, because the governor was kind of figuring out where he wasn't always, the tallest, most confident. You had to figure yourself out a little bit. And so to kind of get in that rhythm, not tonight, you switched up the look, but you would wear suits to school. You had a suit that you would wear to school. Well, how did this come about?
I think the quote from my sister is, "You were such a dork," I think was the, the eloquent way of describing. She actually literally gave me $10 to go to Macy's to buy some jeans, which she said because I was embarrassing her. I think there's an old Oscar Wilde quote that says the first duty in life is to assume a pose. And the second duty, no one's ever really figured out. And I think I'm in that second phase of my life, but I certainly put on a pose. And this book is, as I say, it's not sanitized. I'm scrutinizing all this. I'm trying to go deeper. Why I have sweaty hands, why my heart starts beating, why I discovered gel. Literally.
You got gel in your hair?
Yeah, I know, shocky. Why I put that suit on, why I put that mask on, why my face was starting to grow in the mask. That I wasn't being myself, I wasn't being true to myself. It's one of the reasons my mom, there was part of the origin story of my mom is she vehemently warned me against getting into politics. She was so disappointed with me for getting into politics, and she really didn't want me to run for mayor. And again, I never understood that until I got the oral history and found out, oh, of course, that's why they got divorced. She never told me the why. And so I always was trying to be something, and I think all of us have this, right? When we're trying to figure ourselves out, and I was trying to figure myself out. So I started wearing suits to school every day, because you know what? Maybe people would look at me. Because I was that guy in the back of the class, and this is another huge part of the book. And you wouldn't care, and it's not that important, but I'm ironically in the wrong profession. I don't read speeches because I can't read a speech. And I just can't look up and down at a written word. I can do teleprompters, can't stand it, but I can do that because I'm sort of fixed on the words. But I had such a severe case, learning disability, severe case of dyslexia, that it marked who I am. I'm still that kid. I'll always be that kid. I'm in the back of the class, heart's pounding, praying the teacher doesn't call on me, getting laughed at during the spelling bee, the whole thing. And so much of my life was identified in that respect. My mom said some things to me that I struggle with and I write about in the book, where she said it's okay to be average. Which is a hell of a statement. And it wasn't some like pump up thing. You're unique and special. You can limitless. It was like, no, it's okay to be average. Like, fuck. And so back to the mask and how you overcompensate for that. And so this whole book, it's kind of like the social media last year. It's like, and it's back to my opening comments on a sell-by date. And that's a memento mori. It's life too. I don't want to dream of regretting the coulda, shoulda, woulda. And one of the great things about being able to write your own story, which we all should do, is it allows you to just let go. A deep breath. And it's okay. All the mistakes, that process of becoming, discovery, your strengths, your weaknesses, just let it go. And, other people can judge you. And again, that's the third thing. I can't control that. And so it's been a really extraordinary journey, and it's really helped me shape shift what I'm trying to do in this role as governor of California, and the role that I think we all have as citizens to really meet this moment of Trump and Trumpism head on.
I think that deserves a little applause. You talk about, and I'm going to have to do a little moment of rehashing some of the early Gavin years journalism here. This may be, Jesse Waters may bring this up later tonight, so I may get you in trouble with this, because there's one part of the book, because you talked about overcoming dyslexia, working through that, kind of what helped you find yourself with sports. Talk about how baseball saved you, basketball certainly being part of that. and I came to, I think it was page 74. And so once you get the book, go to page 74. I don't know if, don't quote me on it exactly, we'll find it out. He's talking about your basketball career. And I am a guy who played a little basketball, and I just have to bring up the fact that there's one thing in this book that I really don't trust. You said your senior year, you averaged 19 points and 14 rebounds.
That's what I'm talking about, 14 rebounds.
And I don't know how you're governor and then not in the league.
I'm telling you. Come on.
You got some size, you got a frame, a little Moses Malone, some Charles Barkley. What's going on, man?
Marin County Athletic League. So let's put it in perspective for anyone that knows. So we're a little softer, okay?
Are you playing against plumbers? Is that what it was?
No, he just, I think, what's that old French poem says? He only appears eminent because of the flatness of the surrounding terrain. That may be best to describe my basketball career, but
well, then on that, I played a little basketball, and I kind of want to see this rebounding technique.
No, but come on, yeah, you always.
I need to see.
That's just you got to use whatever. Are you serious? Is this like what? Are you like working some viral moment? It's like Jimmy Kimmel the other night. I got this Peace Prize. What do you got?
So it's
that's just like that. You got to use it. You got to know. You got to get the. Come on, man. I'm Draymond Green.
What do we do with the elbow? Show me the elbow.
No, well, you knock the hell out of your opponent. Is what you do. Sharp elbows. We need more of that in the Democratic Party. Yeah, yeah. But no, it was sports. But that's what ultimately got me out of my shell, and I became just got a little better every single year, and worked my way from right field. Anyone knows Little League, right field, and eventually made it to first base. It's huge, it's metamorphosis, but it ultimately led me to get a miniature partial scholarship that got me into a 4-year college. Again, SAT score was not my ticket into a 4-year college. My academic career, you don't have to do op research on me, folks. I put it all out there.
Is it 1520? Right, that's what you landed there?
Yeah, I think it's 960, trust me. And which my sister always reminds me. And so it literally, you were able to do, that's why, I know some people dismiss sports and that's not, but I love it because the one last thing that unifies us, except Trump, is just try to take it all over. You saw today, by the way, he's building a 100,000 seat stadium for a UFC fight that he says he's building. That's what he was talking about today.
I thought Republicans wanted to get sports and politics and separate them. So it's just when it works out for them, they're happy to inject themselves in sports.
I was just so pleased he went out there for that Super Bowl. But, I would have enjoyed that with Bad Bunny, but that's a whole nother aside. That would have been a very different kind of Super Bowl halftime show. But so for me, that was, it was a big dominant part of my life. And one of the just to give you the character of my mom, we kind of were latchkey kids. And, as I said, she was doing part-time bookkeeping. She was part-time waitress. And she was doing work at I Magnum's, buyer there. And working for Aid to Adoption of Special Kids, kids with intellectual and physical disabilities and all these side jobs. And so she was, my dad was distant in those early days, but she was there as much as she could. And I remember one Little League game where sadly I played the whole game. And so, first time at bat, swung and missed. Second time, swung and missed. Third time, strike 3. Went up to plate 2 more times, struck out 3 times, just devastated. And Joe Wagner Field in Larkspur, California. And I remember my mom watched the end of the game, and I'm quitting. I'm done. I hate this. The worst thing. Why do you make me do this? The whole thing. And she grabbed a box of balls, and she went back out a couple hours later. No one was on the field. We lived nearby. And she started throwing batting practice to me. And I never realized at the time, it was a lesson in life. It was about resilience, and it was about grit. And so all these memories, all these stories that I just, and I never, I also wrote about being with her on her last breath. These are things I never told her. I never said I love you. I never did. I was this young man in a hurry, and constantly just focused on me, my learning disability, my struggle. Never understood what she was going through. We always had roommates. I write about waking up and all of a sudden there's 2 people living in her bedroom because she's now in the living room because she's just hustling, making ends meet. We were a foster family growing up. Suleiman and a lot of these amazing young men that came into our lives because of my mom and her hard work and grit. But I was there with her many years ago. And this is one of the privileges of public service, is fast forward. I'll get to that. When she called me, she leaves a voice message, says, "Hi, honey, it's your mom." And literally. And she goes, "Next Thursday will be the last day you'll be able to see me. You may want to check in before then." A literal voice message. I'm running around. I've got a few little businesses. I opened a little restaurant and wine store, and I'm doing my thing. I wasn't paying much attention to her. She had breast cancer. It came back. She overcame it the first time. I kind of took that for granted. I'm doing my thing. I immediately do what anyone would do in a voicemail. I called my sister. I'm like, "What is going on?" She goes, "You need to get over now." Went home, and my mom said she was going to do an assisted suicide. And I didn't realize how much pain she was in. And she found a courageous doctor. It was illegal in California. And I know good people can disagree on this, and I deeply respect people that do not approve of this. But I can't thank that doctor enough for having the courage and being willing to lose his license to help her get through this misery. And in order to help her, my sister and I were the last two with her. And the doctor came in, did the doses, and there's a process. And I don't know if any of you have ever done this. God bless you if you have. Nothing about it is romantic. It's not like the credits on a movie, and it's like, this is like traumatizing. And it was so bad, my sister just, as she was having a hard time breathing, she looked at me. We're holding hands on both sides of her, and my sister just takes off and runs out. I'm like, "It's okay, go." And I didn't know what to do, and because I said I'd be there. And I was holding her hand in those last sort of desperate breaths. And we had pleasantries, niceties. And then I sat there for 20 minutes afterwards, my head on her stomach, saying out loud all the things I didn't have the guts to tell her just 20 minutes earlier. And you think about, just not dreaming of regretting and all that. And again, to the motivation. This book was not supposed to come out this year. This was supposed to come out a couple years ago. I know everybody, I'm in New Hampshire. This story writes itself. There's no way you're going to believe this.
Something could happen.
But yeah. But it's back to this. It's just, it's for my kids. I literally dedicate it. Say, my 4 beautiful kids, so you can continue the story. But it's a love letter to those that raise us and to those remarkable people. And, I learned that my mom, she, when she was a kid, her dad put a gun to her head in a raging fireplace, threatening to kill her. He came back from Corrigan. He spent almost 3.5 years as a prisoner of war, and he came back broken. Raging alcoholic, ultimately committed suicide himself. Threatened my mom as a young child. All this stuff, I didn't know any of this. And it explains so many things in so many ways of who I am today and how this echoes generation, how everything is shape-shifted. And so again, it's been a powerful and a cathartic process. And, and I know many of you have struggles much more challenging, much more interesting, but it's really important and so motivating, I think, to really start to understand who you are in a deeper and richer way by relating to those, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, to their stories and their lives, and trying to do justice to bring their lives to print as well, because I don't want them to be in peril, to be judged not to have lived. And so this has it's meaningful for me, and it's meaningful for me that many of you are here tonight as well. Thank you.
And it's really, I think, in a lot of the interviews and conversations you've had around the book, sparked the feelings of you kind of reflecting back now on yourself, thinking about kind of how we opened, talking about your kids and how you view your relationship with them in kind of relation to your relationship with your father. And you talked about how one of your sons texted you about the prospect of, has anyone asked you if you're going to run for president at any point? Has anyone done that? But saying, like, Dad, you can't run for president. Like, we need to spend a little bit more time together.
Yeah, no, this was a few months ago. I naively did what you're not supposed to do, and that was answered a question directly. Because Bob Costas, we did some CBS Sunday morning thing about 6 months ago. He tried to ask me to run for president, and I was like, come on, let's talk about something else. And then he says, okay, have you ever thought about it? I'm like, okay, I've thought about it. So, it was a passing point. And then, of course, the headlines, Newsom considers run. Newsom poised for run. Newsom prepares for 2028.
Let's get into that a little bit more right now.
And I'm reading all this, my staff is all upset, and my son. And so I've got this, he's a little version of me, man, little shit. Excuse my language, right? He's a little young man in a hurry, and we're like, okay, buddy, striking that pose, trying to figure himself out. And I didn't know he had this in him, and it really hit me, and that's why I talked about it the other day, and I appreciate you bringing it up. He texts me, says, Dad, I hear you're running. I said, I'm not running. That's crazy. And he goes, I hope you don't. And then I'm like, why? I said, well, never would do that without a decision. He goes, I hope you don't because I'm too young and you need to spend more time with us. And he's 14, and that's not how 14-year-olds talk. And it was like, and I remember, I screenshot, I wish I had my phone right now. And that's like, that hits you in a different place. And this is a story of, again, when I had my first kid, Montana, and I had this unbelievable rock star wife. And, she was probably, and thank you, but she was like, am I marrying your dad? Who came back in my life and got to know Jen, and he was incredible. And I don't want to paint he's a beautiful character in here. He's my social justice, racial justice, economic justice guy. He's the Sarge Shriver in my life, not just the Bobby Kennedy. He's my motivation in terms of so much of what I'm trying to do in my day job every day. But she didn't know. And so, and I write a lot about that. And I also am very honest. I had a marriage that didn't go well. And you may have read.
What is Kimberly up to these days?
She's no longer engaged to Trump Jr. But that alone that's worth a book. You can't make that one up.
And what would the title be of that?
I don't. But she was a young woman in a hurry. And, I want to only speak positively.
You think the best is still yet to come? Or is that you?
At least it was memorable. But so my wife's comes from an unbelievable family, just a rock star dad who literally retired early to raise the kids, and it was their basketball coach, their tennis coach, was that kind of person. And here I am, then work out, my own divorced parents, and that is an aside, but when we had our first child, that was the real stress test, and I didn't know. I'm like, my dad I always felt a little abandoned, right? You're like, he didn't love me. I always knew he did when older I got, but when you're a child, you don't feel that. And so I just remember when my daughter Montana was born, and you don't know. You'll be like, oh, nice, thank you. And it was like this, I know when people talk about, all my West Coast friends talk about light and love, and I'm like, oh God, okay, yeah, I know. And we're all gonna go to Chez Panisse and go have some, organic, whatever. And I'm like, light and love, like this sort of just this weight from head to heart, in a way like a baritone. And thank God. And so for me, I can't screw that up, these 4 kids. I can't screw it up with Jen, And there's nothing more challenging. That's why just grace, no matter you're Democrat, Republican, just grace with young kids and just in their own journey, in their own relationship to their parents in this business. But that text has an outsized influence on any question about the future.
It's not the only headline one of your sons has made. Hunter, right, just a big fan. And this was back last year. Yeah. You talked about of Charlie Kirk, yeah. And he came on your podcast. Yeah. Some headlines have been made of the Gavin Newsom show, some recently that we may get into. But he came on and you talked about how he was a big fan of Charlie Kirk, and Charlie Kirk was very popular with a lot of young people. And I think a lot of people just kind of were shocked by that, responded to that, and kind of got into nitty gritty. But I never heard anyone kind of like follow up and ask you, as we're having this conversation about where are social media companies that are owned by people who only have Donald Trump's best interest in mind to profit more. Did you think that plays a role? What do you think drew him to this figure, a little bit in contrast with Dad, right?
No, God, no, well, yeah, so just background just to fill in so you understand what you're talking about. So it's interesting, my kids, you know, I broke down. 14, my oldest just got a phone 2 years ago, and I wish I waited till she's 16 now. I wish I waited till she's 30, and I've lost her. That's why I'm promoting this ban for folks 16 and younger in California that we're likely to get done this year. Because I need help. I need help. Parents, you get it. Like, it's not an intellectual exercise. I need help. All the rules were, so I did a contract with her, then I did an addendum to the contract, then ripped up the contract, and you know, and it's you know, you all know. But during COVID, they had little Chromebooks, and they had access to YouTube, and it's like Andrew Tate was finding my son. Like this Peterson guy up in Canada is finding my son. Sure, Rogan was finding my son. The least of my concerns, this guy Kirk. I didn't know all this. He's just doing his homework. He doesn't have social media. He's not watching TV. He's doing his homework. And the day I launched my podcast, and I can get into the why and the motivation, because I know a lot of folks were angry that I, quote unquote, was platforming
we'll talk about
people that I disagree with, which I'll explain in a second. But the morning of that, he goes, Dad, when are you starting that podcast? I said, no, I'm doing it. The first one's today. He goes, well, who are you having on? I said, some guy, you don't know him, Charlie Kirk. And he goes, oh my God, Dad, I have to go meet him. I'm like, how do you know him? He's like, well, all my friends know him. I'm like, he goes, you know, he's kind of funny. He shows up at all the schools and he debates everybody. I'm like, he tried to get out of school that day to sneak in to the podcast meeting. It was a big wake-up call for me, and it goes to the why I wanted him on the podcast. Why? Because this guy is organizing, and in a profound and outsized way, has been able to organize young men that have drifted away from the Democratic Party in profound and consequential ways. And we have seen this crisis. My wife is a fierce advocate for women and girls. She did years and years ago, she did a documentary that Oprah bought called Misrepresentation, about the mis and underrepresentation of women and girls. But she followed up, and I'm very proud of that. But she reminded me, 2 years later, she followed up with a film she says that you're in, Gavin, called The Mask You Live In, about hypermasculinity and masculinity. She said, you can't talk about women and girls unless you're talking about the crisis of young men. She says, you didn't really pay attention to that film. It was 15 years ago. And she says, nor is your party, the Democratic Party. And we've watched men drift. Suicide rates, 4x higher than women. Dropout rates, deaths of despair, across the board. You're seeing this crisis of men. And the whole idea is that from the perspective of, often for Democrats, we thought it was a scarcity mindset, that we were taking away from our agenda for women and girls. When in fact, my wife was making the exact opposite point as a fierce feminist, that it's precisely what we need to focus on is fair play and partnership, and we need to address the crisis of young men and boys. But Charlie Kirk understood that. Trump understood it. He exploited it, hasn't done a damn thing to address those underlying issues. So for me, the podcast was a way of exploring that. I want to know how the other side ticks. I want to know how Trump ticks. I want to know what gets under his skin. When I started doing those all-cap tweets,
I did it.
and I put my picture up on Mount Rushmore, I was dressed up as the Pope.
A lot of shirtless
I
photos.
looked like Superman. And it's the whole idea of putting a mirror up to the absurdity of Trump and Trumpism, but with a sense of humor. And I'll tell you one thing, these guys, you know, Orban, all these sort of guys that are on the spectrum of that sort of, you know, they don't mind indignation. They actually thrive on it. It makes them appear even more powerful the more outraged we are. What they really despise is humor and being mocked.
True.
And that's why I thought it's important. So that's what I'm exploring when I reached out to the other side. And I will just say this on that. Divorce is not an option, guys. I mean, we got to define our terms of the future. I mean, that old Clinton line, but it's true. You know, I married in a big Republican family. I told you how much I revere my father-in-law. He's an extraordinary person. He, by the way, only learns about me watching Jesse Waters and reading
Jesse
the...
talk about you?
Jesse and I are involved. I have a coincidentally $787 million lawsuit against Fox and Jesse Waters for defamation, which, you know, is just, it's pending. I'll just leave it at that because of all the bullshit they've been spewing for years and years and years. For years and years and years. Back to the complicity of why we have Trump and Trumpism. Would not have happened without Murdoch, Inc. It would not.
And
we need to call that out.
And it certainly won't continue to perpetuate in the same way if it's not for people on the right who have this stranglehold, formerly Charlie Kirk's, which actually I do want to talk about a little future. We are in New Hampshire. I think there's a little bit of future conversation there. I do want to talk about some future. On the topic of Charlie Kirk, I don't know if y'all have seen this. There's a photo going around. On the Department of Education, there is a banner of Charlie Kirk. Guy who attacked college, a guy who told like 14-year-old girls, like, don't go to college unless you're looking for a husband. And I think that all the banners of Donald Trump, when we have a Democratic president, are certainly going to come down. But if maybe you were in the position of taking down some banners, how would you feel about that Charlie Kirk one? Would that be next on the list? Where would that Charlie Kirk one come?
I mean, this is an imperial presidency. This guy's dyed purple, like a king or an emperor. We're having birthday celebrations with the military. By the way, that 100,000-seat arena or stadium he's building is for his birthday next year for the UFC. I mean, at the Department of Justice is a giant banner of the President of the United States. Again, the rule of law or the rule of Don. And so, you know, not just about those banners. I mean, that's just a no-brainer. Well, what about this Kremlin ballroom? Yeah. This monstrosity that, by the way, is, again, a story of corruption as well.
Absolutely.
You think this is free? It's free like a puppy.
Don't tell Kristi, man.
I mean...
She's had a tough
well
day.
Done. Well done. But all those folks currying favor, again, you got to kiss the ring. Ask the folks, you know, I mean, what happened to free enterprise? You know, the healthy horse pulling a sturdy Reagan. You know, he's got Ronald Reagan looking down on him literally, not just figuratively, in the Oval Office. It's crony capitalism now. It's state capitalism. 10% of Intel, 25% of AMD and NVIDIA, MP Materials, golden shares. I mean, this is an extraordinary thing to witness. And yes, those banners symbolically and in many respects substantively are dear leader, a reminder of what consequences. So those things, yeah, those things are, that's not even, you know, that's a no-brainer.
That's something to look forward to.
That's a no-brainer.
I want to do a little forward-looking at the same time as we do a little looking back, because I think so much of the book is kind of intermixed in the conversations that you've been having about so much current news going on. One of which you gave an answer talking with good guys at Pod Save America when you likened the Israeli government to an apartheid state. And there was a lot of conversation online about that. I think some people said that I saw some headlines that were saying essentially Newsom is kind of reading the direction of the room. He's licking the finger, seeing where the wind is blowing, seeing the polls, seeing that. The genocide that is being carried out by the Israeli government is incredibly unpopular with every single American broadly. And they're saying you're just reading that and you don't actually believe what you said there, or it's kind of like a shape-shifting move by you. But it made me think back to 2004 when you risked your own political career talking about and moving forward with marrying gay and lesbian couples in San Francisco, and how
Black and white movie days.
But how party leaders didn't want to talk to you because of it. You kind of you'll read it in the book, a little skirt. President Obama didn't necessarily want to talk to you.
He became a rock star and champion on it.
But you also mentioned that Senator Dianne Feinstein, who was one of your political mentors, how after the 2004 election kind of blamed you and said that you restarted this conversation, and it kind of history echoes a little bit. In the same way, 2004 DNC, you're a rising star, weren't invited. 2024 DNC, we let every group talk except for Palestinian Americans. And then that's the group of people that we blame, saying that it's their fault, and not reckoning, realizing, talking about reaching out to people who are seeing their entire families lost in what every expert has called a genocide. And now they're saying Newsom's just reading the room. So what was your reaction to seeing that, of Newsom's just reading the room?
Well, I didn't, thank God I don't read comments. I would literally be, in some locked room right now if I did. But if you read the book, you'll also understand my connection to history. I grew up, many members of my family are Jewish. My aunt, Cindy, was married to Ed Asner, the actor, for years and years and years. And she's a big part of this book as well. My uncle Paul Scheer, and first time I went to Israel with him and family, and so I grew up JCC camps every summer, Camp Tawanga, which is my favorite camp. And so I was very much part of particularly in the Bay Area, San Francisco Jewish community. I went to Israel a week or two after October 7th. I met with President Herzog. I met with Bibi in a bunker. Before I left, I got crates because we brought a field hospital. I went to the hospital in Israel to meet with victims and family members after the atrocities of October 7th. And so I want to level set on that basis. What I can't accept today, though, is what Bibi Netanyahu is doing in Israel. And I just can't countenance that. And that was, good people can disagree. I don't like the direction he's going. And I was specifically referring to a Tom Friedman column last week where Tom used that word of apartheid as it relates to the direction Bibi is going, particularly on the annexation of the West Bank. And I can't sit back in the spirit of this book, in the spirit, that define marriage equality, and this, in terms of, my values and beliefs, and watch that. I disagree with Bibi on, I went on Meet the Press. I said, it was about a year ago, he was doubling down on stupid, just abandoning a two-state solution. And so, yeah, I'm pointed in that respect, and I'm very angry with what he is doing and why he's doing it. What he's going to ultimately try to do to the Supreme Court there, what he's trying to do to save his own political career. And so forgive that outrage. I'm very angry about this war, with all due respect. Not because I'm angry the Supreme Leader's dead, quite the contrary. I'm not naive about the last 37 years of his reign, 47 years since 79, the revolution. But I'm also mindful that you have a president who still is inarticulate and incapable of giving us the rationale of why. Why now? What's the end game? And then the zig and zag, the justifications, I'm trying to deal with 2 million people that are going to lose their health insurance in the state of California because of that big, beautiful betrayal. 2 million. No other state harder hit than the state of California. Tax cuts for billionaires, Medicaid being cut, Medicare being impacted, food stamps, all of those things happening, and now we're, we're not helping folks in L.A. They haven't done a damn thing about that wildfires last year. Not a dollar of support, not one penny. One of the worst natural disasters in American history, not a penny. But now we're overseas, and now we've got a regional war, and we have allies shooting down our planes. We have 6 Americans, including a young man, younger than me, who lives in Sacramento, California, who just died. So yeah, forgive me. I've got strong opinions about some of these things, and I think it's important to express them.
And like I said, I want to do a little bit more future given where we are and kind of a lot of what's been going on. But I wanted to get back into what you had to say about kind of, not in the spirit of that question, but reading the room when it comes to, or understanding what makes, and we've had conversations about a guy like Steve Bannon, right? And Steve Bannon kind of helped build Donald Trump, his facade. Again, these things are lies. Yeah. But what in this moment, when you see so much of the right turning on itself, do you think, and it is, Trump was going after Tucker Carlson, he's going after Megyn Kelly. What do you think when you sit down and have a conversation with someone like Ben Shapiro? Like, what was your takeaway from that in terms of what do we need to be talking about? What do we need to be saying? Certainly not on the policy, but on the framing and in the reaching people and the organizing. I kind of want to get back to that. Like, as you look into the future, what has been your takeaway of a conversation with Steve Bannon, a conversation with Charlie Kirk, a conversation with Ben Shapiro?
And the guy who tried to recall me, Newt Gingrich. Frank Luntz, I'm talking about framing and messaging. Those are not the only guests I have on this show, quite the contrary. And by the way, I say this to folks all the time. No one has to tune in. I'm just trying to, I sincerely am trying to understand motivation. I'm trying to understand what we're actually up against. I've always believed, and a big part of this book, I'm a small business guy, started right out of college, pen to paper, a part-time employee, Pat Kelly, and I grew the business, about 21 small businesses, about 1,000 employees. I say that to not impress any of you, but to impress upon you this notion, my passion for entrepreneurialism and iteration. I believe in failing forward fast, not being reckless, but taking risks. Same-sex marriage, perfect example of that. I think it's one of the reasons we're the only state in the country that has universal health care regardless of pre-existing conditions, ability to pay, and your immigration status. I've been condemned for that, but we do it. That's why we have $25 minimum wage for health care workers in my state. That's why you can bet insulin for $11. We're willing to take on big fights in all of those categories. And we, get muffed up too. I mean, I get, take the hits. But I've always believed in the context of looking. Success leaves clues. Success leaves clues. Why did we get, this guy, Donald, how did Donald Trump win? How did we lose 7 swing states? Right? And all of us have opinions on that. I'm up to 27 pages of your opinions and my opinions. I'm not, by the way, someone thought I was kidding, and I had a member of the press come in. She said, Jesus, 27 pages. And so much of it contradicts, the pundit before it. I still feel like we need to do a forensics. I don't think we've done enough.
Well, we're
of that
holding one.
searching.
The DNC's holding one back,
and they're holding it back. And do you
think we should put that out there?
I put it all out there.
Put it out there.
But it's just because, look, continue to do what you've done, you'll get what you got. And that's why I said, for things to change, we have to change. And so I think that's important. I mean, look, I've had, we've had 100 guests on the show and have some really wonderful. And
I did you a disservice framing it as just like Charlie Kirk
and
Ben Shapiro.
Like, Jesus, who the hell is this guy?
We got Ben Meiselas, we got Keith Edwards, it's okay.
No, and I'm out there at TwitchCon. I'm meeting with gamers and streamers. I'm doing Fortnite Fridays.
Would you go on Hassan's show, Twitch? Speaking of which, Hassan Pike, you might.
Yeah, which I've said in the past. And the point is, I'm trying to absorb. I'm trying to understand the world I'm living in. And what are the trend lines that define the world we're living in? And I think it's incredibly important to do that. I spent all my post-reelection time on the road, if I've been out of the state, in red states. I was down in Mississippi. I was down there in Kentucky. I was down, well, not Kentucky. I mean, I went to Arkansas first. And then, we spent a lot of time down in the South trying to sort of understand why the Democratic Party walked away. Back to where's my party? We were in the majority in a lot of those legislatures in 2010, not 1910. It wasn't that long ago. And now we kind of walked away from it. So I'm trying to walk down the path that some others are not, because I think it's important to do that. And I think that's what you do with dyslexic. I can't do it the way you all do it. I have to do it a little bit differently. And in that process, there's a lot of judgment, a lot of doubt, a lot of self-doubt. But there's a willingness to constantly seek to understand the world I'm living in before I'm ultimately understood. And that's an important journey. I think it's an important journey for politicians too. I really want to be open to argument. I want to be interested in evidence. It doesn't mean I'm changing my positions. Sometimes things radically change. Marriage equality to me was important. Why? Because I couldn't argue separate was equal. The whole debate in 2004 was civil unions. I'm like, well, but you're a Democrat and you're supporting separate is equal now? My desk at the governor's office is a guy named Warren's desk. Former governor, former Chief Justice. Warren. It's a reminder that separate is not equal. And it's a reminder of our role and responsibility. And at that time, my role and responsibility to my truth. My truth is to stand up for ideals. My why, stand up for ideals and strike out against injustice. Back to me being a Sarge Schreiber Democrat. The Kennedy we all forgot about. The guy who created VISTA, Legal Aid to the Poor. The person that ran the war on poverty when we actually reduced poverty in this country for a short period of time. The Special Olympics, the Peace Corps. We have the largest service corps in America in my state. It's larger than the Peace Corps. I think that's one of the ways we knit back this country, shared experiences. And by the way, when I swear in, we require 450 hours of work. We'll give you $10,000 for your college education. And it's one of the biggest programs of its type anywhere. It's certainly the biggest in the nation. And, I believe in that. And but no one there is, I'm not asking them, are your dad a Republican, your mom, you Republican, you're Democrat? Will you support? It's shared experiences, And you start to realize everyone wants to be loved. We all need to be loved. We all want to be protected and respected and connected to something bigger than ourselves. And that's the spirit, despite the fact I'm punching back. And I guess, yes, I'm punching back. And I'll take a backseat to no one in terms of holding the line and punching back. But yes, it goes back to what I said in the outset. We're all looking forward to the moment. Because
when it happens.
Yeah, just like, yeah.
We can clap for when it happens.
Yeah. Well, no, it's just because that stacking of stress. I mean, everything you guys talk about, grace and humility. I mean, I talk about my recall. You think, how's your day? Getting hundreds of thousands of people, and every coffee store there's 10 people. Get rid of this new scum guy. The whole thing, and so you get through those things, and you start to and realize how temporary this all is. So grace, humility, and just try to do better, try to be better, and that's the story of a bit of my life, and I'm continuing. I want to continue to write. What is it? O mio life, Whitman, right? He talks about the powerful play goes on, and may we all contribute a verse. And I think New Hampshire contributes that verse, not just every 4 years, but in a profound and outsized way. But all of us can contribute a verse, and I think that's what I'm trying to communicate in this. And I realized through the process of writing, you don't have to be something to do something. Back to the pose, back to the mask I put on. I always thought I had to be something to do something, and it's about using your moral authority, the spirit of gay marriage, not just your formal authority. And all of us have that in abundance. Donald Trump? No. You don't even know what that is. And, you know, I just, and forgive me, I know our time's limited, but just a special thing for me. I never met Ambassador Young. So lucky. I'm going to be at Jesse Jackson's memorial tomorrow, and I likely will see him again. But I was down in Atlanta, and, you know, Chief of Staff for Martin Luther King. And he was telling me these amazing stories. It was like the most amazing hour. I'm like just literally just smiling. And he's all these, and Jack, this is like the stuff for us. Like, you know, these are the heroes. And he's talking about Martin Luther King and, you know, visiting him in jail the 5th time, all thing. But I didn't understand, and forgive me, how deeply enshrined the values of Gandhi were in the context of that movement. Obviously, nonviolent and passive, but I didn't understand how integrated that was to the degree I came out of that meeting. But I also came out of the meeting in the spirit of what I was just saying, thinking about the fact that we don't celebrate President Martin Luther King Day. They don't celebrate in India, you know, former Prime Minister Gandhi Day. I don't celebrate in California former Governor Cesar Chavez Day. And you start thinking about, and, you know, even it proves my age, you know, I even think about guys like Havel and the Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia. You think, even Mandela, you know, just short 4-year term. What he's defined by is not his time in office. What all those folks, frankly, are defined by is their time in jail. They all shared that at their peak of their influence. They all shared that in common. But it was their ability to exercise their moral authority. And that's at the core of this corruption story that is Trump.
Yeah.
At the core of the American story, this is the issue that we need to restore the soul of America. We need to restore the morality that defines the best of America. And that's what it's all about right now, is reigniting that and finding that again.
Yes. And although we could go for hours, it is where I want to conclude. You talking about leaders who have shaped the movement, forward-looking, the fact that Trump is not the whole sickness, but certainly a symptom of the way the inequality in this country has manifested itself. Talking about that forward-looking, Bernie Sanders came out to California, and he was yeah, let's get a whoa. And he was talking about his, and it has been recently, a proposed tax plan, 5% wealth tax annual for billionaires. I think we clap it up for that.
He did on the national level, yeah.
On the national level. Just talking about, we can get $3,000 checks to every American, man, woman, or child making under $150,000 a year. We can expand our health care. We can make child care not a burden. We can do so much. And this is kind of what he's laying out. A lot of people, because he's doing it alongside Congressman Ro Khanna, who I think we can also give a little bit of applause for what him and Thomas Massie have done. As what a lot of people are saying, like, this might be a indicator or demarcator who's on what side of what for 2028. But he also came and kind of spoke at the state level, because you've been having this conversation around a proposed wealth tax, whether that puts California at a competitive disadvantage. And you said you've thought a little differently at the national level.
I always have. Yeah, look, it was Plutarch about 50 AD, don't quote me. But think about it, 2,000 years ago, there's an historian warning the Athenians that the imbalance between the rich and the poor is the oldest and most fatal ailment of all republics.
Yes.
2,000 years ago. Fast forward today, 10% of people own 2/3 of the wealth. You got a 30-year-old, that's first 30-year-old in the history of this country, generation, that's not doing better than their parents. Bernie Sanders has been absolutely right about this for decades and decades. There's no question about it. So I did my State of the State, the dreaded teleprompter, a month ago. And I made a very proactive case for California's progressive taxes. That's, you turn on Fox 24/7, it's high tax state. By the way, which it's not. 16 states tax their low wage earners more than we do our high wage earners. Who are the high tax states? Who are you for? Texas and Florida, most regressive taxes in the United States of America. Yes, California, one of the most progressive. I was making a case for that. And I was also making a case that we need new tax bracket and we need to roll back those cuts that were part of the big, beautiful betrayal, unquestionably. The question we were posed and the question that we've been asked in California, and the question that actually, interestingly, has been rejected by a lot of labor unions that oppose this wealth tax, not all of them, it's been promoted by one labor union, is a wealth tax at a state level and the impact that may have with people in a progressive tax system that already 1% of people pay about 47% of all of the income tax in my state. Not many people. The impact of a one-time tax, because it's a one-time tax, would have on that tax base going forward. And we had an independent analysis done, not me, the state did, that showed we'd actually lose hundreds and hundreds to billions of dollars a year in traditional income taxes because so many people would move. And it's not anecdotal anymore. There's been some big, back to Jesse Waters, he highlights it every day, people that have already left our states. But my state of mind absolutely is aligned with this notion that we're going to have to substantively address this wealth disparity in a much more progressive manner and look at it from the prison nationally where we're able to capture, I think, a stronger rationale as opposed to this race to the bottom or the top in each state competing as it relates to the prospects you're going to lose population. So that's where my position is on this topic.
Donald Trump has gotten business leaders to bring him trophies, to bend the knee, to throw him parties.
Did you see the trophy I got on Kimmel?
I thought it was
yesterday?
well-deserved.
I'm so proud of it.
You're still going through the wine, right?
Yeah, it was the Netflix, Paramount, Skydance, something.
We got to break them up, by the way.
Orama, yeah, Peace Prize. I wish I could have carried it out here. It's about 6 feet tall.
Well deserved.
Eat your heart out, Donald Trump. That's a real Peace Prize. It was handed to me, by the way. If you haven't seen it, Seth Meyers' brother plays version
Gavin
of me.
Part 2.
Yeah, the guy on the skateboard and, doing it's a little, it's fun. It's fun, anyway.
But Trump has gotten.
But I am proud to get my own Peace Prize.
You should be proud of the award. I think
it's well deserved.
I don't know if you
overdue.
Had all the bottled wine that was poured in there. But he has gotten all these business leaders to just debase themselves. Don't you think that we should be giving them similar amounts of but differently framed shit? How unpatriotic is it to say, I made all my money, a la Elon Musk, because of California, I am going to take my ball of billions and now flee? Yeah. Should we not just you guys are unpatriotic, you hate this country that's been levied against Democrats for so long. Do you think that we as Democrats and you as a proverbial leader of the party should be saying that more?
Well, you know what I'm saying. If you want to Google Elon and me in the back and forth. So that's well established with some of these guys. And again, I told you I went on a road show internationally, calling folks out. Of course. I mean, it goes back to this that there's a billboard in L.A. I don't remember this. It may be mythical. But someone told me about a billboard in LA on the 405. Anybody know the 405 freeway in LA? Yeah. So you may know where I'm going. It's one of the most congested freeways on planet Earth. All right. In the billboard, large letters says, "You're not stuck in traffic." And so you about 20 minutes later, you get 50 yards closer. And then you realize in parentheses under "you're not stuck in traffic," it says, "You are traffic." Think about that when you call, "Hi, honey, I'm late, I'm stuck in traffic." Right next to you, a person saying, "Yeah, back to society becomes how we behave." This has all happened on our watch. And so I think about that in the context of how complicit, to your point, everybody is at this moment, and how we all have to rise up and hold ourselves first to a higher level of accountability. And so it's in that space, I'm trying to do more, I'm trying to say more, but it's also in that space that we can end, because Donald Trump is an historic president. We all agree with that. He's historically unpopular in every category, and he is on the run. You're winning. We won the Prop 50. You're winning not just in big states. It's not just about those races, those big fancy governor's races in Virginia and New Jersey. How about the 25 state races? The state level that we flipped. We're 25. Not one Republican is flipped. Not one. We're 25-0. Something's happening in this country, and you're all a huge part of that. This is it for Trump. His presidency as we know it today is over in a matter of months when Speaker Jeffries gets the gavel. There's nothing more important than that. Don't talk about 2028. It's not about 2028. It's about 2026, and it's about taking back the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. Thank you guys very, very much for being out here. Jack, thank you for doing this, buddy.